So the scapegoat, that is the child who just cannot do anything right in the eyes of the narcissistic parent or parents. Usually they are also empaths. They are very sensitive, who will be used to put blame on and shame and guilt.
Those of you who were the scapegoat in your family system, you know exactly what that role is. Scapegoat is just what it sounds like. It's the person who gets the pile-on, who gets the blame, who experiences sometimes what's called family mobbing, where literally the whole family system may gang up against them. People become scapegoats in a family system for a variety of reasons. At one end, it may very well be because that scapegoat is a threat. They're better, they're more serene, they're more psychologically intact, they're smarter, they're more skilled, or at some level, and this is what I'm convinced of, the scapegoat gets it. It's almost like from a very young age, the scapegoat's got everyone's number in that family system, and they get it, and the adults in the system know that they get it.
A child who is always seeking the truth, who will always question things, realize even at that age that something is up, but not being able to put their finger onto it.
And so they'll often try to isolate them. And that's exactly what does happen to the scapegoat. They either get entirely isolated or they get criticized, and more often than it's both.
The scapegoat child learns how to cope with the abuse by, for example, isolating themselves. To use my husband's example, to escape the wrath of his narcissistic mother, he would avoid her as much as possible. So coming home from school, if he didn't have, or if he had, when he had completed his chores, or if he didn't have any chores to do, instead of just chilling, as normal kids would do, he would isolate himself, so escape to his room, where he would read a lot, listen to a lot of music, escape into his own little fantasy world. And he found a lot of solace in reading. So the typical bookworm, where he would escape into fantasy books, or whatever books were around, he would just escape. That was his way of coping with the abuse, of escaping the terrors and the trauma of being raised by a narcissistic mother.
So a scapegoated child gets very confused because, as you can imagine, in essence, their entire life, their entire developmental history is characterized by being gaslighted. They can't get a straight answer. They're constantly being manipulated and emotionally abused. But more than anything, they're blamed for things they have nothing to do with, which can be absolutely crazy-making for a child. It would be crazy-making for an adult. And a child can easily get confused. As you can see, a person who's scapegoated in a family system can go into adulthood feeling deeply alienated, suffering a loss of self-esteem, suffering a real sense of grief because they don't have a sense of belonging, have a really difficult time negotiating adult relationships. They may actually take on the burden of the abuse of everyone in the family, of what every child in that family was to experience, may end up falling all entirely on that one child. Now let's talk about the golden child, almost the opposite role to what the scapegoated child experiences. They bring glory onto the family. Something about them brings goodwill onto them from the rest of the world, which elevates the narcissistic parent or parent's grandiosity, so they want to sort of stay in that child's good graces. The golden child will receive more attention, more compliments, more resource. It's pretty clear who they are. The golden child was sort of like a nascent or a hidden narcissist, sort of in the making. They may actually think they deserve all this adulation and celebrate that role, and in fact may be a real participant in scapegoating a scapegoated sibling. However, in some cases, it's really, really challenging for the golden child. They may sometimes feel a sense of survivor guilt. They may appreciate the fact that they're somehow protected or getting this adulation, but in the same breath, they're able to see that their other siblings are not only not getting nearly as much, some of their siblings may be suffering.
The golden child is used as a false reflection of the narcissistic parent. They know how to please the parent. They know how to extract love. The golden child will realize that they are favored more, that they are given praise more often. They know how to get onto the good side of the narcissistic parent. The scapegoat child will use isolation as a coping mechanism, and the golden child will become the parrot, for lack of a better word. Now, the parrot is someone who will, always agree with the narcissistic parent, always be on their good side, because then they know that they will be given more praise, given more love, or at least, the false feeling of love. You will also find that there is a lot of comparison between the golden child and the scapegoat child. The golden child will have special favors, will be praised a lot. The scapegoat child will be used to put blame on, to lay guilt trips on, to be degraded, to be berated a lot of the time. What happens when the scapegoat child and the golden child grow up? You will find that the scapegoat is not able to show their true emotions, whether that is sadness, happiness. That is what I experienced with my own husband as he grew up, the scapegoat child. There was no showing of gratefulness or being happy. Whatever emotion came up, he was incapable of showing these emotions. So this is the aftermath of growing up with a narcissistic parent. Your emotions as the scapegoat child, as the empath, are totally numbed out. As I have seen with my own husband, how he is now 57. Just now, recently, in the last 2 years, he is showing more emotion, more compassion. Even though he felt all these things, he just found it very difficult to display this. Yet in the case of the golden child, 9 times out of 10, the golden child will themselves either become a full-blown narcissist, or they will show very strong traits of narcissism. And this is what we saw in my husband's brother as well, where he wasn't a full-blown narcissist, but he did show a lot of the narcissistic traits.
Golden children may actually grow up and go on to be rather successful adults, but it's a complicated role, and it can definitely be a setup for potentially becoming a narcissist as an adult.
There are many different ways that children growing up in a narcissistic home can develop. Either full-blown narcissist, they will show narcissistic traits, they will become very withdrawn in the case of the scapegoat child. But both children have been terribly abused. There is just no getting around that, whether that was physical or emotional. All siblings are terribly abused. Then there is also that the narcissistic parent speak to both children on separate occasions, and tell the one child something different than what they tell the other child. And this is another means of control, because you will find that these two children will oftentimes be at loggerheads. There will be a lot of bickering going on because he or she was getting these two kids to be enemies. Instead of having that loving feeling of having a brother or a sister growing up, there's a lot of rivalry. This is the triangulation that comes into play by the narcissistic parent. Hate is planted between siblings, and it just grows and grows from there. And at some point you will find that there's no relationship anymore. There may have been at a very young age a relationship between the siblings, but you will find that the animosity just grows and grows into adulthood.